Hello everyone and welcome back to the GoBCOMM. My name is Krim and I just messed up really bad in a previous recording. It was awful. I'm not going to save it because that would have gotten some very bad comments. Alright, so today I have some stories I want to talk about and my comments over them. Before we get into that though, let's talk about the video and the format. So I'm working with Premiere. I'm going to sip some tea with honey in it to soothe the throat. Just to make it easier to talk. But I have Premiere Pro, which is the video software that I'm using to edit these videos. Now, this software I'm still not fully educated on, so it's a little bit difficult to use. The big problem, though, is gaining access to the footage necessary to sort of make what I'm talking about relevant, visually. So instead, we're just going to use some B-roll. And that's me playing Doom in multiplayer. That's just going to be running in the background. Now, for gamers, this may be entertaining. This may be something that you can sort of like, oh yeah, it's pretty cool. I like what's going on back there, and I like what you're saying. To a lot of people, this may be a huge turnoff because it's Doom. It's an M-rated, very violent game, but it's a multiplayer, so it's not going to have too much gore. It's going to have a lot of gore, but not as much as the campaign. We're going to use B-roll in the back for quite a little bit of time. I simply just don't have the digital integrity to sort of compose videos the way I would like to. So for now, we're sticking with this. But let's talk about some of the stories I got coming up here. So the first one I have is over Scorpio rendering Microsoft games in 4K. The second story I have is about the interview with Yoshida and his discussion over the PR and, more importantly, the poor PR that was used to sort of solicit No Man's Sky. And then the last thing I have, which is just my fun story, is Kojima. Just Kojima. I just have Kojima. I have him right here. And he's my fun story guy. So we're going to talk about these. And let's jump into it right now. Alrighty, Microsoft and the Scorpio rendering in 4K. Microsoft have made it clear that the Scorpio will be rendering game footage in 4K. Now, we talked about the PlayStation last week. We're going to talk about the Scorpio now, and we're going to talk about the PlayStation a little bit in this as well. So, as it sits, Microsoft has said and come out that their first-party titles, the games that they develop, are going to be rendered in 4K. It's going to be native 4K. It's not going to be upscaled. This is cool. I love this. Now, they didn't talk about third-party titles, which is the thing everyone's sort of concerned about because, I mean, those are games too. Those are games we want to play. I'm sure that game developers are going to be capable of creating 4K content for these consoles, so I'm not too worried about it, but as it sits, Microsoft has confirmed that their titles will be running in 4K. That's Halo, that's all their titles that they have. And that's awesome. The console has been quoted by Microsoft as the most powerful games console ever, and it is statistically going to be yielding 6 teraflops. That's a lot of teraflops, folks. Teraflops, for those of you who don't know, is just a measurement of processing power for AMD chips. I don't know what specifically it is a product or additive of, but you basically calculate it based on a certain number of things in regards to the AMD chip that they're using for their parallel processing. Now, like anything in a computer, the more the better. The more teraflops, the better the computing power is. I think the PlayStation and the Xbox launched this next-gen consoles with around 2.4 teraflops. The PlayStation Pro is going to double that, I believe, go up to like 4.5. We're looking at a triple increase on the Xbox in regards to the Xbox One. The Xbox Scorpio in regards to the Xbox One, and that is going to be 6 teraflops. Now, what this means for gamers who don't have 4K technology, I'm still uncertain about. Improved lighting, improved frame rates. I can't stress that enough. Improved frame rates. Can we please get that through before we go into image quality? Yeah, we're going to skip the convenience of including better frame rates with our consoles that are used everywhere, and instead focus on the small number of people who own 4K technology so that we can get image quality as great as we can for them. Don't do that. Please, I need 60 frames per second. I need it so bad. This is a big selling point for me in regards to upping the technology. If this is something achievable on any of the consoles, I will be upgrading. I like better frame rates. It just makes the game look nicer. It is a quality thing, and it's important to me. Now, there was some talk about the PlayStation Pro in this, and that came into play with Digital Spy and President Andrew House of PlayStation, and they were discussing whether or not it was misleading to the public as they were describing the 4K capabilities of the PlayStation 4 Pro. And Andrew House said, no, it isn't misleading. He said something that seemed a little bit odd, and I'm not going to directly quote him, but he said that he didn't say that. He made it sound like the quality is more important than the technical specifications of what's happening, and that consumers are going to buy the product based off of that. Now, I don't know what the difference visually is going to be between an image upscaled and an image natively produced in 4K on a 4K TV with HDR support. I don't know that. You're talking about things that I'm going to need to spend a lot of time. I would need to go into Best Buy and borrow thousands upon thousands of dollars of technology to see if I can figure out if there's a difference. And if there is, if it's even that big of one. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that native resolution in 4K is going to be of a higher graphical fidelity than it is for upscaling. That's just because that's how I'm assuming it'll work. That isn't to say that I'll notice a difference. That isn't to say that subjectively I'll even care, but I'm going to be much more impressed with the technology used to render in 4K than to upscale. That's just the way that it is. Now, again, if you could give me 60 FPS, I wouldn't care what resolution I'm gaming in. It could be 720p for all I care. At least it'll be fluid gameplay. But that's just something to keep in mind. Now, that was from Digital Spy that gave us that little insider story from Andrew House. Now, they were also talking about whether or not the PlayStation 4 Pro would be rendering or upscaling, and they said that for the majority of the games it'll be upscaling. I don't know what that means. Like, is there a potential for a game to not be upscaled and rather rendered in 4K? Maybe. It sort of depends on what's required. I don't know how this all works, and I don't know why they would say maybe, but I don't really care. Again, I really don't care. I don't own any 4K technology. This isn't going to benefit me at all. It's like they're just skipping one step and going to another one. Forget about putting a space station in space. We're just going to go to Mars and put a little base over there, and everything's going to be dandy. No. You gotta do the mid-ground first. So, still a little bit concerned on these consoles and whether they're not even going to be worth it. Phil Spencer, I believe, was quoted saying that this is a premium console and it's going to come at a premium cost. Now, I do expect that from a games console that's going to be as powerful as this, but we're going to have to see what it's capable of. So, and I expect to be blown away, by the way, especially after last generation's handling of Microsoft's console. They better do something for me. So, we'll see. That's this story and my thoughts over it. Alrighty, the second story is about No Man's Sky, because why not? Yoshida, an executive at PlayStation, was quoted talking about the poor handling of really just marketing for No Man's Sky in regards to Sean Murray's handling of it, because he was an indie developer. There's a lot to take away from this story. Some people are focusing on the fact that he's saying that Sean Murray couldn't handle it because he's an indie developer. There are some people who are just like, well, Yoshida should have taken some of the blame as well because PlayStation did use it to boost reputation for their console, and others are saying that it wasn't just poor handling, there was a number of problems with it. And I would agree with the last one. The anticipation for this game was too high, the games media's handling of this was too crazy, and the developers and publishers and their disingenuous portrayal of the game was also not helpful to it. Now, I gotta say, personally, I've played No Man's Sky, didn't mind it. I got what I wanted out of it. Is that to say it's the greatest game that ever existed? No. There are definitely some problems with it, but I didn't feel like the experience was diluted by any means from what they showed me. I enjoyed it. I would say it was like a 6 out of 10. And I don't use scale systems to judge games, so that doesn't even really mean anything to me. It was pretty good. It was worth the money I spent on it. I'll say it like that. It was fun. I enjoyed it. but it's over with. There isn't really much to say, though, about this specific story and what Yoshida said about the game's handling. There was just a lot of problems with it. This machine functioned on a number of levels with a number of cogs, and you can't just blame one of them for the malfunction that happened in it. Yeah, Sean Murray was disingenuous about this game. At the same time, the constant use of this game in games media and in even Sony's PlayStation event during E3 were sort of adding on to that. And the anticipation for this game on the community's part was also ridiculous. Like, I've never seen so much hype for a game than I have for No Man's Sky. It was incredible. I understand why. It seemed like a very unique game, but it just isn't worth it half the time, and there is no need to be that anticipated over a game. I feel like the blame needs to be spread across everyone evenly. You can't just pile butter onto one end of this sandwich and be like, okay, take a bite, hope you get some. But I don't know, there's not too much to say about this. This was just something that popped up. Give me your guys' opinions on it. We're going to move on to the next story. Kojima, I love this guy, and so does everyone else in the games industry. This god of a man has once again graced us with his presence. The new games director for the game Death Stranded has had some things to say about Konami's use of his, well, it's not his property, but what is basically his property. Metal Gear Survival specifically. Now, there was an interview with Kojima where Kojima was asked, what do you think of Metal Gear Survival? And he commented on it. And he made it clear that he had nothing to do with it, and then said that if he did, he wouldn't have used zombies, he would have used mechs. Which is fucking interesting. And it's fucking hilarious, because the moment I read it, I was just like, you know what? I'd play that. I'd play the shit out of that. It's just interesting how he is able to immediately fix the problem that Konami is about to face with this game, simply just out of nowhere. Like, it was just some weird, intrusive thought. And yeah, I'd use mechs. Okay. Alright, that makes actually a lot of sense. For those of you who aren't familiar with Metal Gear, there are mechs in Metal Gear. There are not zombies. Metal Gear, as Kojima describes it, is a political friction espionage game. And that's a pretty accurate portrayal of what all of Metal Gear is. It's his game. He should know. And more importantly, he should be the one really deciding what happens with it. And I think the irony of this is that he's not even involved with the development, and he's still capable of just, you know, here's an idea that would probably work, while Konami is somehow trying to figure out what a Metal Gear is. In terms of narrative, mechs are a part of the game. Like, there are mechs in the Metal Gear universe. And that would make a lot of sense to make a survival game with mechs for a Metal Gear game than to just randomly put zombies in. And now, I watched some gameplay of this new Metal Gear Survival. I believe it was at Tokyo's GoBCOMM. And I didn't understand a thing because it wasn't translated. I heard two words, and that was Manta, because that's the name of one of the characters, and Wormhole, because instead of fulcruming people, you send them through a wormhole. This game looks stupid. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. It's poor use of the property. It looks like Metal Gear simply because it's being used in the engine that was designed for Metal Gear 5, but that doesn't excuse its lack of coherent content. I don't know. I thought it was just funny because I read that and I'm just like, yeah, mechs would actually make this kind of fucking interesting. Like, if there were just mechs taking over everything and you have to, in a very stealthy way, take control back. It sort of reminds me of just Zero Horizon Dawn. Or Horizon Zero Dawn. I can't remember the name of the game. I don't really care. I'm trying not to focus on it because I'm very excited for it. But, you know, mech animals, that's awesome. But a survival game with mechs, also an interesting idea, and it was literally just a moment for Kojima, and he made that idea seem much more worthy of being actual content I'd want to immerse myself in than what Konami is currently trying to do with the property, which is be as generic as possible and make a zombie survival game. So, it's always sad to see content like that just be disrupted and destroyed, and I'm just glad Kojima has control now of his own production and what he wants to do. So, There's always some little ounce of good in all this bad. Konami, why don't you hit up that pachinko machine? Why don't you go back to doing that shit? Because pissing off every gamer in the world isn't really beneficial to anyone, especially when those people are the ones who are going to be purchasing the products you're spending as much money as you can to make. Again, that was just a weird story, but tell me what you guys think about it. Are you excited for Metal Gear Survival? I know some people might be because it's still using, the Metal Gear engine. There's going to be traits to Metal Gear in this game. Some people may see this as an outlet to provide themselves more Metal Gear content, and I'd completely understand that. At the same time, though, I feel like a lot of those fans are enraged because of the lack of just coherency as to what Metal Gear is. So tell me what you guys think about this. Again, from Konami, it's just more bullshit. Kojima, though, I'm looking forward to the new game. Tell me what you guys think about this story. Tell me what you think about everything that's happened in this video. Leave a comment. Give me a story idea. I may talk about it in the next video. Until then, take it easy.